Good morning. We have a little science lesson today about energy pyramids. So we've been learning about the transfer of energy in the ecosystem through food chains and food webs. Do you remember where most of the energy on Earth comes from originally? The sun. So the sun transfers its energy usually first to the producer, because the producer is the only thing that's able to make its own food. So using the sun, it is able to make its own food from the energy that it gets from the sun, and that energy passes on to various consumers. Today we're going to look at an energy pyramid, and this is in your Delta Reader, which is the book that is on Bright Thinker. So this is in Bright Thinker, not on the to-do list, but if you go to Science and then Ecosystems Reader, this is where we are reading from. On page 22 and 23 of the book. So you are welcome to go back after you're done with this video and read just the book itself if you needed to refresh yourself on anything. So let's look at energy pyramids, which you can see right here. Now, each organism in a food chain gets energy from its food. The organism uses up most of that energy to live and grow. Only the energy of the organism does not use is passed to the next member of the food chain. For example, plants in this ecosystem need to have some of the energy just for themselves to grow. But the energy that is not used could be given to the consumer, lizard, for example, that eats that plant. So us as humans, we are using up some energy of the food that we eat, but there's also extra. And so the extra energy is always the part that ends up being consumed by the consumer. Now, an energy pyramid diagram shows the amount of energy moving through a food chain. We look at the bottom level first. Producers use up most of the energy they get from the sun. The small amount left over is passed to consumers in the next level up. Those consumers must eat many producers to get the energy they need. This pattern repeats all the way up the food chain. It takes many organisms at the bottom to support just a few at the top. Okay? So these plants are getting lots of energy from the sun at the bottom, these desert plants. They're using up a lot of this energy as well. And they give off some of that extra energy to the lizards, for example, a little further up. So there's less lizards than desert plants because they need to have just the leftover energy. Then the lizards need to have energy of their own. So they use up some of that energy for moving about, running, and they are only left with some energy that's still stored in their body. They keep some and store it. That energy would be transferred to a snake, for example. A snake would be a consumer in the next level up. Then that snake uses up some energy, and then the part that they don't use is stored, and that gets eaten. Or when a coyote, for example, eats it, the energy is transferred to that coyote. So it says here, desert plants are producers. Producers make up the base of an energy pyramid. So producers are plants that make their own food. Now, a lizard has to eat lots of desert plants to fill its energy needs. So there's a lot of food that has to be eaten for them to have extra energy for themselves and to store. A snake has to eat lots of lizards to meet its energy needs, and a coyote must eat many snakes. To meet its energy needs. Okay, now matter in ecosystems. Energy is always moving through ecosystems. Matter moves through ecosystems too. Matter is anything that takes up space and has mass. Okay, so it takes up space and it has mass. Nitrogen is one kind of matter. Nitrogen gas makes up most of the air around us. Nitrogen is also a nutrient that living things need in order to grow. Okay, so nitrogen is in our air. It is a gas making up most of the air. Nitrogen is a nutrient that moves in a cycle. First, it moves from the air into the soil. Next, from that soil, it moves into living things, producers. Then it moves back into the soil. Finally, it moves back into the air and the cycle continues. So nitrogen is in the air and then it ends up going into the soil, which gets into, from the soil, it's transferred to a plant or producer, and then to the consumers that eat it. So here it says lightning is what changes nitrogen gas in the air into a form of nitrogen that plants can use. So lightning actually changes it so that it is something that is in the soil for plants to be able to use. Rain carries it into the soil. So through lightning and rain, lightning changes it so that it can be used by a plant, and rain is what carries it into the soil. Some bacteria in the soil change nitrogen gas into forms of nitrogen that plants can use. Over here, actually I should have started with this part. And since it's a cycle, there's not necessarily one starting point. So we'll go back to this. It says plants take in nitrogen from the soil, and animals take in nitrogen by eating plants or by eating animals that eat plants. So similar to what we've been talking about with the passing down of energy, this nitrogen in the air, lightning changes it and rain actually passes down that nitrogen so that it's in the soil and then the plants use it up. Because of bacteria in the soil, that's what changes its form so that plants can use it. Animals take in nitrogen by eating those plants or animals that have, or eating other animals that took nitrogen from plants. Now, some bacteria in the soil change nitrogen in soil into nitrogen gas. It becomes part of the air. And animal wastes and decomposing material release nitrogen into the soil. So animal wastes, so when they go to the bathroom, and decomposing material, it could be a decomposing animal or plant, that's releasing it into the soil. So that is the nitrogen cycle. Sorry about that. We are going to do lots of other things with this nitrogen cycle so that you can see it in multiple ways. But think of it as pretty similar to the transfer of energy that we've talked about. Okay, so the nitrogen gets cycled through, just like we were talking about energy getting cycled through from this time the air. So it's not energy from the sunlight, but it's nitrogen in the air, which goes to soil, which is soaked up by a plant, which is passed on to an animal. Then when that animal decomposes, it goes back into the soil again. So that is what we're going to be doing for science for the next few days, learning about the nitrogen cycle, energy pyramids. That is all for this video, but I will be posting some other resources on nitrogen cycle for you to see it and hear it several other ways as well. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will talk to you later.